49ers, are they the favorites in the NFC? Let's start a little smaller. Are they the favorites in the NFC West? Because I saw a tweet the other day about someone saying bet on the Seahawks, and
I saw that too.
That went viral.
I saw that too.
So, want to ask, do you think they're the favorites in the NFC West? And then we'll transition to the bigger scale.
I do think they're the favorites in the NFC West, but again, it's tough to just dismiss Seattle.
Correct.
Because Seattle has a good offensive line. What held them back last year was their defense was awful, but it improved as the season went on, and I have a feeling it's going to be better this year. They have a bunch of high picks. Pete Carroll's a good defensive coach. I mean, it's not going to be a great defense, but if it's mediocre, that team's going to be a lot better. Only thing is, like, head-to-head, I don't think the Niners fear Seattle. Like, Geno's not the kind of quarterback that really gives them problems. But so I still think the Niners are the team to beat in this, no matter who their quarterback is.
I agree. I do want to give props to Seattle because they did some things this offseason. They signed Julian Love, who I thought the 49ers could really benefit from, a nice nickel safety hybrid type of player. They signed Draymond Jones at defensive end. That was their big signing. And so I think that they've made a couple of improvements at certain positions, but Seattle still, to me, is a developmental team in a way. They still are basing a good amount on rookies or second-year players, and I don't think that that team right now is just a good fit against the Niners. I don't think their offensive line is a good fit against our defensive line. And overall, I mean, we saw what happened last year. You're right. I don't think the Niners fear Seattle one bit. I think Kyle Shanahan understands what he has, especially after all the years Russell Wilson dominated the 49ers. Last year was a little bit of a change. And I think that while Seattle has improved, I don't think that I don't think that they can eclipse the Niners right now. I don't.
I think it's getting closer though, and the more uncertainty the Niners have at the quarterback position, if they have to play a game with Sam Darnold against the Seahawks, who knows?
If Seattle drafts a guy like Anthony Richardson, if they trade up and draft him, that's when you start to think about it. Because if you let him develop for 1 to 2 years in the while Geno goes through this pretty much a 2-year deal, I think you let him develop, you start him. That's when San Francisco should probably start getting.
And those are the kind of quarterbacks that give the Niners trouble, because I feel like with their wide nine defense, it's all about like don't read anything, just get upfield, like and that's great. But the weakness is containing quarterbacks who want to get outside the pocket.
Yeah,
and that's not really Geno. Geno wants to prove that he's a pocket quarterback. It's like, yeah, go ahead and do that against Nick Bosa. Good luck.
Right.
But anyone who wants to get outside the pocket, the Niners just kind of give him, a red carpet. Go for it.
I mean, we saw it last year. Marcus Mariota. I mean, quarterbacks like that. I mean, Jarrett Stidham too. Yeah. I mean, Nick Bosa himself publicly said to you guys how they didn't expect it. They just didn't expect it at all.
Yeah.
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 But let's go. Bro.
He was like, dude, Tom Brady could have ran through those holes. I was like, yeah, exactly.
Oh man. But hey.
Yeah.
49ers seems like they'll be the favorites in the NFC West. Odds also favor that. Let's go full NFC now. The Eagles got worse. They were the number one team last year. The 49ers are number 2. What do you think about the full NFC?
I just feel like the Niners are pretenders and fool's gold. I'm sorry. It's not anyone's fault on the team. It's just the way they're constructed. I feel like in 2023, if you have major question marks at quarterback, you're not really a contender. Like, I look at it kind of like remember the Utah Jazz a few years ago in the NBA? Mm-hmm. Like they could be the 1 seed, like they could go for 65 wins, but there was something flawed about the way that team was built, and they just got torn down. So until Brock Purdy comes back and it makes a full recovery and stays healthy for the rest of the year, or Trey Lance makes a leap or whatever, I'm still looking at this team as like, man, you're a quarterback away.
Right.
And say what you want about Philly, like they took a step back, but they still have their quarterback and they have a great offensive line. Detroit, Goff isn't great, but he played 17 games last year and they have a great offensive line. So the Niners, like, you don't have a great offensive line. You go through quarterbacks every 8 games, but the rest of your your roster is freaking loaded. So they're a tease. They're a freaking tease, and they've been a tease for like 4 years.
I think that this is an interesting point because right now, to me, I have to take, right? You have to take what the last few years have told us about the Niners, but I also have to
Yeah.
see the entire landscape of the NFC. And in my opinion,
It's so
it
weak.
has
It's
never
weak.
been weaker. This is the weakest,
It's
this
weak.
is the weakest the NFC
Yeah.
has been, and I think especially because
All the great quarterbacks are in the other conference.
exactly, and I don't think Lamar Jackson
Yeah.
I think he remains in Baltimore despite all the talk going
Yeah.
around right now. I think he remains in Baltimore, which means the best quarterbacks in the NFC are like Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. I mean, like,
Dak's terrible.
yeah, I mean,
I don't
it's
know.
like maybe two
It's like
top 10
no. It's Jalen
quarterbacks.
Hurts. It's Jalen Hurts, Geno, and Goff.
Yeah, I mean, guys like those, exactly. And I mean,
Yeah.
when you comparing them to what the AFC has, it's a lot different. It's a lot different.
I mean, the AFC. Let's go through it real quick. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert,
Yeah, and then I mean, if you go to the second
Trevor
tier,
Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence is there. You've got guys like
Trevor Lawrence.
Lamar
That's
there.
5.
I mean,
Lamar 6.
who else?
Jeez.
Rodgers. Oh, Rodgers might go there in general. Rodgers might go there.
Rodgers.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
he's
know
like
what you're betting on
7.
last year, but overall, I mean, I think
Wow.
like 8 of the top 10, maybe even 9 of the top 10 are all in that conference overall.
Yeah.
I mean,
We didn't even mention Tua, who led the league in passer rating. I
right,
don't think he's that good though.
right.
But yeah,
And I mean,
he's over there.
you also talk about it depends on how you feel, obviously, about some of the reclamation projects in a way. Deshaun Watson is there.
Deshaun Watson.
I mean, I'd expect
Yeah.
Russell Wilson to have a much better year this year under Sean Payton.
I would think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the Niners, they're in a win now mode. The NFC's weak. It's too bad if they if it's all about the quarterback again. And next year
Right.
it's like, who's it gonna be? Like, oh, again, we're doing that again. Can't they ever figure it out? But I think I was talking to Vish on the phone the other day. I kind of get the feeling we were both making this point that the Niners kind of like this now. They like being the
I
team.
honestly think they
that
do.
doesn't really need a quarterback.
I mean,
I think they like it.
let's not even say the Niners. I think Kyle likes it himself.
Yeah,
Because all
I
of this
think so.
talk on the quarterback, well, guess what? In the shadows, you look at the odds. Who's the number 2 team behind the Chiefs for the Super Bowl? It's the 49ers. Kyle's looking,
Yeah.
damn. So I don't know.
We don't even have a quarterback.
I don't know who.
And we're
None of my
number
guys are
2.
healthy, and
What
we're
does that
there?
say about Kyle
Yeah.
and the whole team? Like it says how respected they are. But like to me, if you don't know who your quarterback is, like I'm not betting on that team. I'm not going to. If I were a fan, you can't put serious money on the Niners with those. You're not getting good odds. Come on.
The way that I look at it this year, I'll look at it a little differently because the way that I see it, I think they're hedging their bets on one of their young quarterbacks. I think the way that they look at it, they don't care about what the week 1 floor is. In my opinion, I think Trey Lance starts just because of the timeline of Brock Purdy. I think they're not betting on Trey Lance right now. They're betting on what is Trey Lance week 18, barring injury, of course. I think that they like what they could potentially get with Trey Lance in 18 games of play. We saw Brock Purdy elevate his play from week 1 to week 8. And I mean, he's still not close to a finished product. And so
No.
I think whoever they start, week 1 to week 18, I think that growth is what they're betting on. And to me, that's why I think the 49ers are going to be the favorites in the NFC. I just think because of how the conference is weak right now, I think they'll not only I think that they can get the 1 seed, which will be vital because you play at home for the entire playoffs until the Super Bowl. I think that that's in play. And if they can get that, I think it helps their rookie quarterback who should be able to develop, or not rookie, but young quarterback who should be able to develop up until that point.
What I think is interesting about the Niners quarterbacks, like Purdy and Jimmy, they both burst onto the scene with hot starts, and they both had a lot of confidence early on in their careers. Darnold doesn't have any confidence at all. I mean, that's could have been his problem. And Trey, he hasn't played enough to develop real confidence. So I'm curious to see how the Niners do with those 2 quarterbacks. I think part of the reason Purdy did well is he had this crazy like moxie that he had that he just stepped on
The swagger.
Yeah, that was weird. And it's like, where did that come from? How do you get that so young? I don't know. I mean, Darnold doesn't have that. They have to like create that in him.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they can. And Trey doesn't have it either because he hasn't played. So it'd be nice if they could get like another guy like that on like the practice squad who's just irrationally confident.
And the one thing I think
experienced.
The one thing I think that helped Brock, he started as a freshman at a Big 12 school. And I think that really helped him. I mean, he was told,
absolutely,
you that guy 4 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think the Niners got to look for that kind of mindset in someone. I think that helped for Brock. And another thing is just like not anointing someone. We talked about it at other positions, but Alex Smith was anointed.
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo was anointed.
Right.
Trey Lance was anointed. And it's not their fault. It's how the Niners, they're so desperate for a franchise quarterback.
Correct.
They're like, you're the guy. It's like Purdy wasn't. Montana wasn't. Steve Young wasn't anointed. These guys all had to wait and earn it and prove it. And I think that's probably the best way to structure it. So bring in another guy. Don't make him the franchise guy, and just add him to the room. Put him on the practice squad. Those guys seem to work out in this team.
No, definitely. And so I do think that this season, I mean, it's all boiling up to be one of the best seasons that we've had. And I think that it's just fascinating how this team takes a different turn every year. It comes back to the same storyline. We're going to go through another training camp of whatever really happens. And I think the intrigue about the season as well is, I mean, we're talking about these quarterbacks. We don't know what their situation is. They could very well have Trey Lance be the guy throughout training camp, and for some reason just place Brock Purdy straight in week 1 with the way that they've talked about Brock Purdy, right? Like, nobody knows exactly how this situation is going to pan out because the timelines are unclear about everything. And I mean, I think that just adds to the intrigue of this team.
I just feel like with Purdy, he shouldn't do that, because if he comes back quickly and struggles, no one's going to be like, oh, we'll give him some time. People are going to be like, oh, well, he's broken. Hey, good story, but it's over. The Brock Purdy story is over. Like, all his value could go away really quickly. So he needs to be careful and not come back too soon.
I 100% agree. And I mean, when you talk about that as well, let's take the one case the 49ers know, Nick Mullins. A lot of people point to Nick Mullins and say, oh, he was there in training camp. But Nick Mullins took 7 to 8 months after the surgery for him to get back to 100% arm strength. Purdy, his 100% arm strength is 80% of other NFL quarterbacks, or 85% of other NFL quarterbacks. So 70% of that is even lower. And that's something you do have to worry about, not only for like the 49ers as the product they put on the field, but also Purdy himself for his long-term health. If you're dealing with lingering soreness, the one thing you don't want to do is continue to test the arm and potentially make that lingering soreness something even more. And I think that's where I want him to protect what's best for his future interests. If he's ready, he's ready. But you do have to deal with something after an injury of such uniqueness.
Yeah, and it seems like if you bring him back too soon, you run the risk of ruining him.
Correct.
If you just throw him out there after no offseason, he could really struggle. And there's no reason to be that desperate when you have 2 other quarterbacks who, have talent. 2 guys who were top 3 picks in the draft, not just one. So have some confidence in your team, in your other players, and don't just say, Brock, our entire season depends on you playing in September.
I mean, I agree.
That's pretty desperate.
I agree.
Yeah.
But the one last thing I'll say before we head on out, with the quarterback situation, the one thing I will praise Kyle Shanahan on, because I do believe that I'm critical, very critical of him and his quarterback situation. I think that's the main flaw he's had in his career with the 49ers. No doubt. But the one thing I will praise is he's stuck with his guy. He's had confidence in his starter when that starter's been there. Last year when it was Trey Lance, he shut down all rumors of Jimmy Garoppolo ever coming in unless it was due to injury. When Jimmy Garoppolo was the guy, he stuck with him through some of the rough patches and then let him go on that. I mean, you saw the winning streaks the 49ers had when Garoppolo was there. Yeah. He instilled some of that confidence while also understanding the magnitude of the situation. He's openly said how Trey Lance could have started had he been healthy, and had Jimmy Garoppolo lost a game or 2 more in, I think it was week 10 of that 2021 season. So I like that portion of him. I think he's had the confidence in his quarterback while also assessing the situation fine mid-season. I think that's something that he's been solid at.
I agree. On the other hand, what's kind of rough is that the way this team works is it seems like they start slow on offense and they don't really figure out what they like their identity until the bye week. So whoever wins the competition and starts week 1 loses. You know what I mean? It's almost like you lost. And whoever gets to be the hero week 10 is the winner.
And I mean, a huge part of that is just injury in general. I mean, you look at the week 1 team last year, so much changed. I mean, Elijah Mitchell went out after 6 runs. Trey Lance went out after 5 quarters. So much randomly changed. I mean, and that's that's the huge volatility that the season that this team just goes through during the season itself.
And it does seem like what happens is that all their injuries happen early, and they have to survive the first 2 months or the first month and a half. And they're playing with their B team. They're losing to teams that aren't going to make the playoffs. But, they're 3-5 and they get healthy and all of a sudden they go on their run. Like they keep doing that and it's cool, but they're never going to be the 1 seed that way. They're never going to get a bye week that way. They're going to be on the road in the NFC Championship that way. It's going to be tough to win a Super Bowl that way.
No, definitely. Definitely.